What's happening, everybody? Brent Axe here from syracuse.com, and we are live on the syracuse.com Syracuse football Facebook page, coming off the heels here live of Dino Babers' final press conference of the 2017 season as the Orange lose to Boston College 42-14. They finish 4-8 for the third consecutive season, and Syracuse kind of stuck in neutral here. No improvement tangibly to show. No improvement to show in terms of number of wins from year to year. In year one, under Dino Babers, Syracuse 4-8. In year two, 4-8 as well, putting a lot of pressure on year three to show some tangible, real improvement in the next season. Syracuse losing today to Boston College 42-14 at the Carrier Dome, in another game where the defense just could not make tackles, could not stop basic plays, and leaves the biggest question mark going into the spring season in 2018 and the 2018 season overall, and what Syracuse is going to do about this defense. So not only really looking at this Boston College game, it's looking at the season as a whole. It's looking at next year, its first thoughts on Syracuse football going forward. And there's a lot to take in there. So if you are joining us here live on Facebook, please like and share. Get on down there, hit the like button, hit the share button, let people know that we're here doing this. Spread the word so people can come on in and get their thoughts in. And please leave your comments there in the comment section as well. You know, you go back to Friday the 13th. Syracuse beats Clemson. They're a 4-3 football team with 5 to go, knowing that they had Miami the next week and then a bye week. And you say to yourself, okay, this is the second straight season that Syracuse pulled off a pretty big upset. Now, that one was much bigger than Virginia Tech a year ago. But in year one, you know, you're building things, you're putting in a new system, you've got to be patient, you've got to let things develop. But still, Syracuse gets that huge win over Virginia Tech, and that speech by Dino Babers goes viral. His profile takes off around college football. He ends up in, you know, the film room on ESPN's national championship coverage, and he gets out there and he gets known. And even though Syracuse went 4-8, they certainly know about Syracuse. They know about Dino Babers. They know kind of there's a new sheriff in town, if you will, a new style of play in town with a fast-paced offense and everything Syracuse was doing. And you get here to year two in 2017, and Syracuse, you know, loses to Middle Tennessee State in the second game of the year. Scott Schaefer smoking his victory cigar. I'm not sure if Paul Pasqualoni is going to do the same thing with his win today with Boston College. Not sure he's much of a cigar smoker like our friend Scott Schaefer, but yeah, another former head coach coming through the Carrier Dome there. But, you know, Syracuse loses to Middle Tennessee State, and you're like, whoa, come on now. What's happening here? Game two, and even though Brent Stockstill was a really good quarterback for Middle Tennessee State, he can end up getting drafted in the NFL. Syracuse made up for it by beating Clemson on that Friday night. And we said right here on Facebook Live, we said, writing it and wherever else you want to look at it, that could be a turning point for this program, that it should be a turning point in this program, that Syracuse, even with a backup quarterback in play for Clemson, managed to beat the number 2 team in the country. You're 4-3, 5 games to go. And even the expectation right there was just scratch out 2 more wins. Just scratch out 2 more wins, get to a bowl game, and I think everybody would say, hey, you have done what you needed to do in year two. Well, that didn't happen. Syracuse lost 5 straight games. And you look at the last 3 games in particular, Syracuse gave up 42 points to Boston College, 56 points to Louisville, and 63 points to Wake Forest. They gave up 581 yards to Boston College, 727 yards to Wake Forest, and 734 yards to Louisville. So I guess they improved against Boston College in that realm. But, you know, 162 points in 3 games, all the yards. And Boston College didn't even have a good quarterback. I'm sorry, Darius Ward is not a good quarterback. He was okay. He ran the right plays. And that's where, as a Syracuse fan, going into the next season with the bad taste in your mouth about the performance of this defense, that's what you really have to start to ask yourself is how can a defense how can the bottom fall out like that when they didn't have any really significant injuries? They didn't have their starting safeties out there, Antoine Cordy and Jordan Martin, the past few weeks, but there was no equivalent on the defensive side of the ball of, you know, an Eric Dungy injury or a Dante Strickland injury. I mean, they were thin on the defensive line in terms of experience. They had the linebackers. They had a good enough play in the secondary, so we thought. This is a team that's one of the best third down defenses in the country prior to that Louisville game, and was just doing enough, was improving, did not get blown out until the last 2 games of the season. So what happened on defense? So you got to start to ask yourself, are you going to go forward with the Tampa 2 as your philosophy, as your base? They do other things besides the Tampa 2. Are you going to go forward with Brian Ward as your defensive coordinator? And the big questions with Syracuse are all on the defensive side of the ball. We talk so much about the offense, and that's the sexy thing to discuss. And Syracuse has got to keep Eric Dungy healthy next season if he comes back. And well, I'll tell you what, you can't put this one on Rex Culpepper, who looked awful last week, thrown into that scenario in Louisville, but he looked pretty decent today. Rex, 24 of 34, 280 yards, 2 touchdowns for a kid making his first start. That's all you can ask him to do. He threw that one bad interception, threw it right to the safety, but kid's a redshirt freshman. He's going to make bad throws. Quarterback did his job. Offense obviously didn't score enough and didn't do enough. They had their fair share of mistakes, but this defense just couldn't stop anything. A.J. Dillon today, almost 200 yards, had 193 yards on the day, and he's one of the best young players in the ACC. He's going to give Syracuse headaches for the next couple of years. But this Boston College team, you guys watched the game. They didn't do anything special. Ran the football. They ran that play action pass over and over again, everything to the left, everything to the left, everything to the left. Rollout passes. And I mentioned it, Darius Ward's a backup quarterback. When they got pressure on him, the kid folded like a cheap 10. But that base defense that Syracuse plays, it leaves open the middle of the field, and they just kept boom, 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 boom. So you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place here if you're Dino Babers, because if you fire your defensive coordinator, if you make any changes on defense, then you're starting over in year 3, which is not ideal. If you go forward with it, you're going to have a really hard time selling the fan base that this is the way to go. And it all comes back to recruiting. And it was interesting because if you watch Dino's press conference, he was asked what the big difference between year 1 and year 2 is, even though on the surface the record says you're exactly the same at 4-8. And he brought up recruiting, and he brought up depth, and he brought up players that he believes Syracuse is bringing in to get to the level that even a Boston College is at. I think I saw, here it is from Frank saying, Brent, do you think BC is that much better than Syracuse? And Frank, my answer is no, I don't. Boston College had their fair share of injuries this year. They lost their starting quarterback, Harold Landry, one of the best defensive players in the country, was not out there today. They've lost some linebackers and a number of key players. And guess what? 7-5. And if you look at their schedule, that was not a cupcake walkthrough schedule that they had. It wasn't as tough as some other teams out there, Syracuse included, but there were some tough games on there. Boston College took care of business. In the ACC, they beat Florida State, blew out Florida State, as a matter of fact. They beat Louisville. They beat Virginia. They beat some teams that they were not expected to beat, and they did it basically on the back of A.J. Dillon. Boston College is not that much better than Syracuse is. They do it a different way. They're more ground and pound, great defense, run the football. They had 18 takeaways this year. Interceptions notably. We talk so much about Miami and that turnover chain and, teams that turn over the football. Boston College had 18 turnovers this season. So they're doing those things right. They're taking the talent that they have and maximizing it that way. Obviously, Syracuse did not do that, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. I see Jeff here in the comments say, Culpepper's got some moxie. I was really impressed with Culpepper. The improvement he made from 1 week to the next. And now, again, next year's on our mind, 2018. So you're going to have Eric Dungy, who you've got to keep healthy. The last 3 years has missed basically, the last 3-4 games of the season. And, stop me if you heard that one before, but we keep saying it. You're going to have Tommy DeVito, who, look, I'm excited about Tommy DeVito. I've heard good things about Tommy DeVito, but we haven't seen a lot of Tommy DeVito. So we've got to kind of cool our jets on what Tommy DeVito is and what he could be. He's a 4-star player. He's a talented quarterback. I think he is the future of this program. I haven't seen him, though, and nobody's seen him. He redshirted this year. I've seen him in practice. I've seen him in very limited ways, and from what I've seen and what I've heard from people that watch him every day, he's impressive, but we can't anoint him the next great thing until we really see it before our very eyes. And you have Rex Culpepper right there. So there's some depth at quarterback for the Orange, and that's what it takes. It takes depth. It takes players that can step in and keep it going when you lose key guys. But again, they didn't lose anybody on defense that would, add up to 162 points in the last 3 games, and 734, 727, 581 yards given up in the last 3 games of the year. And, you look at next year, so just taking a peek at 2018, you start the year at Western Michigan and our old friend Tim Lester, who's the head coach there now, on the road. You've got Wagner as your home opener next year on September the 8th. Syracuse will face UConn in non-conference play, who Boston College beat at Fenway Park last week, 39-16. Notre Dame's on the schedule next year in non-conference play. And then these are your home games for Syracuse in ACC play. Florida State, Louisville, North Carolina, NC State. And your road games in ACC play are Boston College, Clemson, Pitt, Wake Forest. Now, okay, it's like the same old story. You go 3-1 in non-conference play, hopefully, in that stretch. And then you've got to find games in the ACC where you're upsetting teams, you're winning up, you are doing what's kind of unexpected. Now, the irony there is that's what Syracuse did this year. They took advantage of a situation and they beat Clemson, which you're only going to do, ideally once or twice a decade. So he took advantage of that. Florida State was down this year, and Syracuse was a field goal away from tying that game and sending it into overtime. But you played as close and competitive with Florida State as you have in ACC play. But they're Florida State. They'll bounce back. They've got all the recruiting. They'll have DeAndre Francois back there next year. I wonder if Jimbo Fisher's going to be coaching that team next year, frankly. But they're Florida State. That's a team that Syracuse is going to struggle with no matter what. Louisville had Lamar Jackson, but certainly on the surface seemed beatable with how bad their defense was, and Syracuse got waxed by them. So those teams that are above you in conference play, and everybody's above Syracuse in the Atlantic, they finished in last place, but, the heavyweights, the teams that you play every year. NC State was a competitive game in the second half, came that close, right? I look at the schedule next year, and I see more of the same. I said, okay, what's going to make me believe that you're going to be better? A quick look at the quarterbacks maybe. But what has been proven in this defense is that if you face a good quarterback, and Syracuse played some great quarterbacks this year, and Lamar Jackson and John Wolford at Wake Forest, Brent Stockstill at Middle Tennessee State, look what they did. Even decent quarterbacks, though, can tear this thing apart, use that open space, and just keep gaining yards. Now, again, the theory is you have an offense that can keep pace with that and get on the field and score. But if you don't have Eric Dungy out there or a comparable quarterback to do it, you get results like today, like last week, and even Wake Forest a couple weeks ago. So what are the big highlights of the year for you? What are the things you're going to remember about 2018? I mean, the Clemson win is what takes the cake. It has to, because otherwise it's just 4-8. What a sales job Dino Babers has to do there, by the way. Because at least if you had won today and you're 5-7, at least you can literally say you made some improvement. You're closer to a bowl game. You're closer to where you need to be. And Dino at his post-game press conference said, we're going to be talking about the 2018 season for a long, long time at Syracuse. Dino, eternally optimistic, always coming in there making these grand proclamations. Well, one way or the other, we're going to be talking about 2018. For a long, long time. I hope it's positive. I hope it's because Syracuse took some steps forward and won some games and got back to the bowl game and did what they need to do. But we could be talking about it for a long, long time if they can't get their act together on defense and regress, if there's another injury, if patterns hold. If patterns hold next year, we'll be talking about it for a long, long time for other reasons. So we'll see. Dino mentioned recruiting. He was asked in his post-game press conference, what's the difference really between 2017 and 2018? And he mentioned recruiting specifically. And there are some players they're bringing in depth-wise. I mean, Tyrone Sampson is a name to keep an eye on. Kid from Michigan, 4-star player on the offensive line. They've got to really hit recruiting, get a few other, notably on defense, big name. I hate to say big names, but impact players that will come in and can play right away. You're losing Zaire Franklin, Paris Bennett, Jonathan Thomas, huge impact players on defense who were brought in under a previous coaching administration, adjusted the best that they could to this defense. But now, in year 3, you're bringing in your own guys, particularly at that linebacker spot. Dino mentioned how they're going to have a lot of experience back on the defensive line. He's right about that. Speaking of players that have to stay healthy, Antoine Cordy has got to stay healthy and on that field because he is a very talented player in that Syracuse defensive backfield. And, look, again, it's not all exclusively Tampa 2. But if you're going to run this zone-based Tampa 2-esque defense, you need corners. You need lockdown corners that can tackle. And Syracuse cannot tackle. The last 3 games in particular, tackling's been pathetic. And we're not just talking about, guys like A.J. Dillon and big-time players that are going to shake tackles, Lamar Jackson, right? They're going to make plays. We're just talking about routine football plays here. Jeff Smith for Boston College took a pass, just a little, jet sweep and ran 66 yards. You've got to stop these plays. These are basic football plays that Syracuse time and again is allowing. So, again, what are you going to do about that? Because if you change your defensive philosophy, you're starting over in year 3, which no one wants to do. No one has confidence right now in Brian Ward to be the guy to turn this thing around. So Dino's got a lot of thinking to do. And he mentioned in his press conference that coaches kind of move on naturally. They get other jobs. He believes in his staff. Well, you lost coaches because, he couldn't pay Mike Hart what Indiana wanted to pay him to be the running back coach. So, think about that. After the Clemson game, what were we talking about here? Pay Dino, worried that other programs might poach Dino. And now here we are at the end of the year like, okay, well, we're right back where we started. We're right back where they were a year ago. So it'll be a tough sell. It's going to be a tough sell because there's only so much belief without evidence and faith and those things that Dino has said before fans start to say, no, I need to see it. It's like that great line from Ghostbusters. I worked in the public sector. Pardon me. They expect results. Remember that line from Ray in Ghostbusters? Yeah, we expect results. We expect tangible evidence that you are stepping forward as a program. The diehard fans will stick with it, and they believe that this is the way to go. And I hate to keep seeing a program making changes over and over again. I think by and large, Dino is the guy that can turn this around. I love what his offensive philosophy can be. I love, in theory, when you've got your best players out there, when you have depth that you can just keep pace on offense and score with these teams and make these game shootouts and overcome your defensive inefficiencies. But we have seen the past few years, it's 1 or 2 guys you lose on the offensive side of the ball. And, you can't overcome it, particularly Eric Dungey. Big shout out to Steve Ishmael. I really hope the Buffalo Bills draft Steve Ishmael. And I can watch this guy keep playing, frankly. He's going to play at the next level. I think he's going to be probably about a 3rd or 4th round pick at the next level. What do you have today? 11 catches, 187 yards. He beat Marvin Harrison's all-time receiving yards record. He beat Amba Edetawu, a record set last year, all-time receiving in a single season. He's got over 100 catches now in his Syracuse career. Shout out to that guy. Shout out to Irv Phillips. Shout out to Zaire Franklin and all these seniors who I feel horrible for. And, look, they've got to do their part on the field and execute. But really feel bad for these guys that won't get to go to a bowl game. Hopefully they can look back and say, we helped propel this thing. We helped lift this thing to where it needs to be and kind of was a part of the turnaround of Syracuse football. But, here in the short term, they just were really good players on what was another, below average football team at Syracuse. But shout out to those guys and all the Syracuse seniors. Dino brought this up in his post-game press conference. He's going to try and start a new tradition at Syracuse in that after the game, they kind of took one last lap on the field and, soaked up the memories and, even after a loss kind of reflected a little bit. So I thought that was kind of neat that he did that. So shout out to those guys. Went through coaching changes. This was not what they thought it would be when they came to Syracuse. Eric Dungey was not a senior, but guys that came here under a different coach and had to ride it out and had to adjust on the fly. So shout out to those guys, and we'll see what the seniors like Dungey and players that'll be around next year, what they can do to build on this and make 2018 a better football season. But for now, it's exactly the same. So the big offseason questions are always recruiting and what you're looking at in recruiting and what kind of players you can bring in that will make an instant impact, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. Health, where Eric Dungey's health is at, and replacing Steve Ishmael and replacing Irv Phillips and replacing some of these key guys on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, who are the up-and-coming linebackers that can step in? Andrew Armstrong is a guy who's gotten a lot of attention to practice. And I'll give a shout-out to Stephen Bailey. Go to the syracuse.com Orange football page. He did a post, I think it's like 20 things to look forward to in 2018. My numbers could be off there a little bit, but he gave you a number of things to look at and say, hey, at least these are the things to keep an eye on and track going forward. But bottom line, Syracuse has not been to a bowl game since that Texas Bowl, and a whole different class of players, a whole different class of coaches. And, Syracuse just continues to look for that turning point, which we thought was the Clemson game, but now just turns out to be a moment in another 4-8 season. So the Orange lose to Boston College 42-14 to close out the 2017 season at 4-8. Just a little note here for those of you watching live and on the replay, we'll be doing this for basketball too. Now, through non-conference play, we're going to kind of pick and choose games to do. We'll be here Monday after the Maryland game. We'll be here after the Kansas game. We'll be here after the UConn game, maybe St. Bonaventure, and a couple other select non-conference games. And then we'll be here on Facebook Live after Syracuse basketball games throughout ACC play. So please look out for that. Please look for all our coverage on syracuse.com on football. And now we shift our focus fully to basketball on the SU athletics front. So we'll see if this basketball team can get Tyus Battle back healthy and can – this upcoming stretch is critical. 3 really big non-conference games against Maryland, Kansas, and Connecticut straight through. So just a little note there that we'll be doing a little Facebook Live stuff after some hoops games as well. But for now, we want to say thank you for those of you that watched all season long here on Facebook Live, and we're in the live chat and, of course, have read and taken in our football coverage this season. Sorry you didn't get a better season to talk about. I wish we were previewing a bowl game for you right now and talking about a Syracuse football team that took that Clemson win and used it as a big turnaround for this year. Alas, we're right back here at 4-8 like they were a year ago, and we'll see what 2018 has to bring. Long off season to think about now for Syracuse football fans. Thanks for joining us here on the syracuse.com Orange Football Facebook page. Again, we'll be doing this for basketball, so look forward to chatting with you a little bit after some hoops games coming up. Enjoy the rest of your Thanksgiving weekend. Thanks for watching here on syracuse.com. The Orange lose to BC 42-14 and finish out 2017 at 4-8.